I stood in the courtroom doorway, the sound of my heels echoing like a countdown. My parents sat on the plaintiff's side, calm, confident, whispering to their lawyer as if this day belonged to them. When they finally looked up and saw me, my mother rolled her eyes, and my father gave that same mocking smirk I'd known since childhood. To them, I was still the girl they'd left on my grandparents' porch 25 years ago. The burden who never amounted to anything. But today the law would decide whose truth really mattered. I adjusted my blazer and walked toward the defense table, feeling my grandfather's voice in my head. Walk straight, and let justice do the talking. I set my files down with calm precision. Their attorney rose with false politeness. Miss Evans, are you representing yourself today? Yes, I said, my voice steady. And I'm perfectly capable. The judge glanced at me, recognition flickering in his eyes. We'd worked together years earlier, when I was still a junior prosecutor. His faint nod told me he remembered exactly who I was. My parents didn't notice. They were too busy smirking until the bailiff announced, "All rise." As the session began, I caught my reflection in the polished table's surface. Gone was the abandoned child. Gone was the scared student who cried over unpaid bills. What sat here now was a woman carved by truth and law. A woman ready to face the ghosts that had once called her nothing. When I finally turned toward my parents, I smiled faintly. Let's begin. I was 7 years old the day my parents decided I wasn't worth the effort. It was summer, and the air smelled of dust and honeysuckle. My mother's red car stopped in front of my grandparents' old farmhouse, the one with the chipped blue shutters and the creaky porch that always scared me at night. Just a few days, sweetheart, she said, kneeling down to fix my braid. Mommy and Daddy need a little time to figure some things out. Her lipstick was too bright for morning, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. I looked up at my dad, hoping for reassurance. He was already pulling my small suitcase out of the trunk, eyes glued to his phone, as if he couldn't wait to be anywhere but here. Grandpa stepped out onto the porch, wiping his hands on a towel. His face softened when he saw me. "You're staying with us, Pumpkin? Just for a week," my mother said quickly. "We'll be back before she misses us." They didn't even come inside. My father honked once as the car backed down the gravel road, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake. I remember standing barefoot on that porch, clutching my stuffed bear, watching until I couldn't see the car anymore. Grandma placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Come on, darling," she said softly. "Let's get you some breakfast." That night, I cried myself to sleep in a bed that smelled like lavender and safety. I kept waiting for the sound of their car pulling back up the driveway. But it never came. They didn't return that week. They didn't return that month. And by the time they finally did, I had already stopped hoping. Life with my grandparents was nothing like the world I'd known with my parents. There were no shouting matches, no slammed doors, no cold silences that stretched through dinner. Instead, there was laughter. The soft kind that fills a house and settles into the walls. Grandma taught me warmth in small ways, through pancakes shaped like hearts, bedtime stories read in the glow of a single lamp, and hugs that lasted just a little too long. But it was Grandpa who taught me purpose. He'd been a judge before retiring, a man known in town for his fairness and steel-sharp wisdom. Every morning he'd rise early, sit at the kitchen table with his old fountain pen, and read the newspaper like it held the secrets of the world. "Justice," he used to say, "isn't about punishment. It's about balance." I didn't understand those words then, but I memorized them. On weekends, I'd follow him to the old courthouse when he visited former colleagues. He'd walk through those marble halls like he still belonged there. "One day," he told me once, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder, "you'll stand where I once stood, not because you must, but because you'll choose to." Those words planted a seed in me, one that would grow stronger each year. At night, when thunder rolled over the farmhouse roof, Grandpa would sit by my bed and tell stories of truth and courage, of people who fought for what was right even when no one believed in them. It was in those moments that I stopped waiting for my parents to come back. I realized I already had a family, one built on kindness, honesty, and love that expected nothing in return. I was 16 when the sound of coughing began echoing through our quiet farmhouse. At first, Grandma brushed it off. "Just a cold, sweetheart." But colds don't last for months. By the time the leaves turned gold that year, Her laughter had grown faint. The kitchen, once alive with the smell of cinnamon and sugar, now smelled of medicine and worry. I'd sit beside her bed after school, pretending to do homework while secretly memorizing her smile, just in case. One evening, I overheard the doctor whispering to Grandpa in the hallway. "It's her heart, Harold. There's not much we can do." Grandpa didn't cry in front of me. He just nodded, his jaw tightening as if holding the world together by sheer will. But that night, I heard the sound of his muffled sobs through the thin bedroom wall. The day she passed, the whole house fell silent. Even the ticking clock on the mantel seemed to pause out of respect. I remember sitting on the porch, watching the same gravel road my parents had driven away on years before. Only this time no car was coming back. Grandpa sat beside me, his eyes hollow but his hand steady as it closed around mine. "Life isn't fair, Emma," he said quietly. "But it gives us choices. You can let pain make you bitter, or let it make you stronger." I didn't answer, but inside something shifted. The same little girl who'd once begged her parents to come home was now silently promising her grandmother that she would make something of herself. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I whispered, "I'll make you proud, Grandma. I promise." After Grandma's funeral, the farmhouse felt emptier than ever. The walls that once held laughter now echoed with silence. Grandpa threw himself into routine, waking at 6, making black coffee, and reading his newspaper like always. But his eyes didn't sparkle the way they used to. One morning I found him sitting on the porch, staring at the sunrise. "Your grandmother believed in you more than anyone," he said softly, his voice hoarse. "If you want to honor her, don't waste that belief. Build something she'd be proud of." That was the moment my grief turned into determination. I studied harder than I ever had. While other kids at school obsessed over parties and prom, I stayed up nights buried in textbooks, law, ethics, psychology, anything that helped me understand the world the way Grandpa did. He supported me through everything, even when the bills got tight. "Don't worry about money," he'd say, handing me a sandwich wrapped in foil. "Worry about meaning." By graduation, I had earned a full scholarship to a university 3 states away. When I got the letter, Grandpa hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "Your grandmother would have been over the moon," he whispered. "You're doing it, Emma. You're finding your place." That night, I sat in my old room surrounded by photos. Grandma in her garden, Grandpa in his judge's robes, me in pigtails holding a cookie bigger than my face. I realized I wasn't just chasing a degree. I was chasing justice, compassion, and the kind of strength they had given me. I folded Grandma's old handkerchief and tucked it into my bag. That way, wherever I went, a piece of home and her would come with me. College was nothing like I had imagined. The campus stretched endlessly. Polished buildings, students in designer clothes, and conversations filled with names of places I'd only ever read about. Coming from a small town, I felt like a misplaced puzzle piece in someone else's perfect picture. My roommates talked about summer trips to Europe and parents who were partners at firms. I didn't even know what a legacy admission was until someone said it to me, followed by a smile that wasn't quite kind. "You're the scholarship girl, right?" one of them asked the first week. "That's cute." Cute. That word stung more than it should have. But I swallowed my pride, smiled, and focused on what I'd come there for: to learn, to prove that kindness and intellect could stand shoulder to shoulder with privilege. The first semester was brutal. Between part-time shifts at the campus library and late-night study sessions, sleep became a luxury. But every time I thought of quitting, I remembered Grandpa's words. "Don't worry about money. Worry about meaning." He called every Sunday without fail. "How's my future lawyer doing?" he'd tease, though I wasn't even sure law school was my path yet. What I did know was that I wanted to fight for people like us, the overlooked, the underestimated, the ones no one believed in. By winter break, my grades were among the top of my class. The same students who had once looked down on me now whispered my name in study groups. Success didn't erase the loneliness, but it gave me something stronger: quiet confidence. When I returned home that Christmas, Grandpa met me at the train station, cane in one hand, thermos in the other. "You did it," he said proudly. Grandma would be smiling so wide right now. For the first time, I believed it too. My second year of college started with promise. I had joined the debate club, made the dean's list, and even landed a research assistant job with one of my professors. For the first time, it felt like everything was finally aligning. That's when I met Liam. He wasn't like the others, or so I thought. He came from money but never made me feel small about where I came from. He'd listen when I spoke, quote books I loved, and always said he admired how grounded I was. For a girl who'd spent years trying to prove her worth, being truly seen felt intoxicating. We spent late nights studying together, laughing over cold pizza, sharing dreams under campus lights. He'd say, "You're going to change the world someday, Emma." And for a while I believed him. But good things have a way of testing you. It started subtly. Small rumors around campus that I'd only gotten my scholarship because of diversity funding. Then came a paper I'd spent months researching, mysteriously leaked before submission word for word, under another student's name. The investigation was humiliating. Professors whispered. My classmates stared. I sat across from the academic committee as they reviewed evidence that wasn't mine. But the worst part wasn't the accusation. It was discovering that Liam had access to my drafts, and that the stolen version had been submitted from his computer. When confronted, he didn't deny it. "You're too ambitious, Emma," he said, his voice cold. "You were going to outshine everyone, including me." The world I'd built crumbled in seconds. But amid the heartbreak and betrayal, something stronger awakened. The realization that I could survive without anyone's validation. That night I packed away the photos, the notes, the memories. I didn't cry. I just whispered to myself, never again. Clearing my name wasn't just about proving innocence. It was about reclaiming the dignity Liam had tried to take from me. I spent weeks in the library gathering evidence, timestamps, drafts, digital backups, anything that could show the committee the truth. Every keystroke, every saved version of my work became a weapon in my defense. When I walked back into that hearing room, I wasn't the same scared girl they'd seen before. I was ready to fight. "I didn't cheat," I said firmly. "I built this paper from scratch and I can prove it." When I presented the recovered data from my cloud storage, showing earlier versions of every chapter, even the professor who doubted me the most leaned back, stunned. It took 3 days, but the verdict finally came, cleared of all wrongdoing. Liam was expelled soon after. I thought I'd feel vindicated, but instead I felt calm, as if I'd walked through a storm and finally reached sunlight. Grandpa's voice echoed in my mind that night. "Integrity is what you have when the world tries to take everything else." I transferred to another university the next semester. Fresh start. No whispers. No pity. Just me, my books, and the fire inside that betrayal had lit. Slowly, I rebuilt my reputation, not through words but through relentless action. I worked twice as hard, mentored struggling students, and volunteered at the local legal aid office. For the first time, I wasn't running from the past, I was building towards something bigger. When I graduated top of my class, Grandpa was in the front row, clapping through tears. "You did it, kiddo," he said. "You turned pain into power." And for the first time, I truly believed I could. Stepping into my first job felt like crossing into a battlefield where smiles hit sharp edges. I had joined a respected law firm in the city, a dream opportunity for most, but I quickly realized that dreams could have a darker side. The glass walls, the polished desks, the constant buzz of ambition. It was intimidating and intoxicating all at once. My mentor, Mr. Carter, was a seasoned attorney who believed in results more than relationships. "This field isn't about justice," he told me on my first day. "It's about winning." That sentence stayed with me. I worked harder than anyone else, late nights, endless case files, skipping meals. My colleagues admired my dedication but also kept their distance. I was the youngest associate, the one without connections, the one who couldn't afford to fail. A few months in, I was assigned to a high-profile case involving a corporate fraud scandal. I found documents buried in the evidence folder that showed our client, a powerful CEO, was guilty. My instincts screamed that we couldn't defend this. But when I took my concerns to Mr. Carter, he smiled and said, "Emma, we don't defend innocence here. We defend clients." That night I stared at those papers in my apartment, the city lights flickering through the window. The same fire that had driven me in college burned again. The one that refused to stay silent when something was wrong. I didn't know what I'd do yet, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let ambition bury my soul. For days I couldn't sleep. Those documents haunted me. Every line of forged data. Every signature that proved our client's guilt. If I spoke up, I could lose everything I'd fought for. If I stayed silent, I'd lose myself. Mr. Carter's voice replayed in my head. We defend clients, not morals. But Grandpa's words were louder. Integrity is what you have when no one's watching. On Friday morning, I made my choice. I printed the files, tucked them into an envelope, and walked straight into the senior partner's office. My hands trembled as I said, "These documents were deliberately hidden. Our client falsified financial reports. I can't be part of this." The room fell silent. They exchanged looks, cold, measured, calculating. One partner finally spoke. "Emma, do you realize what this means? You're accusing a paying client and your own mentor." "I'm telling the truth," I replied. By evening, Mr. Carter called me in. His expression was unreadable. "You just ended your career here," he said quietly. "But you earned my respect." Then he handed me a letter, my resignation already typed. I walked out of that glittering office with nothing but a box of my belongings and a strange calm in my chest. The skyline looked different that night. Not something to conquer, but something to stand tall against. I didn't know where I'd go next. But as I watched the city lights flicker, I whispered to myself, if standing for what's right costs me everything, then it's still worth it. Losing my job was supposed to feel like failure, but it didn't. Felt like freedom. For the first time in years, I woke up without fear of someone watching over my shoulder or judging my worth. Still, reality hit hard. Rent, bills, uncertainty. The silence in my apartment was heavier than ever. I spent days applying for new jobs, most of which never replied. A few interviews came, but the moment I mentioned why I'd left my firm, their smiles disappeared. "We're looking for team players," they'd say politely, code for people who stay quiet. One rainy afternoon, while scrolling through listings, I saw a post from a small nonprofit organization, Legal Aid for Families. They defended single mothers, immigrants, and elderly people who couldn't afford representation. Something inside me sparked. At the interview, the director, an older woman named Ms. Reynolds, looked me in the eyes and said, "You stood up for what was right, even when it cost you everything." That's exactly the kind of lawyer I want here. I started the next week. The office was nothing like my old firm. No marble floors, no polished glass, no power suits. Just people who genuinely cared. My first case involved helping a woman escape an abusive landlord. She held my hands after the verdict, tears streaming down her cheeks, and whispered, "You saved my life." For the first time, I realized maybe losing everything was the only way to find what truly mattered. 2 months into my new job, I'd finally found a rhythm. Mornings with coffee and case files. Evenings filled with the quiet satisfaction of helping people who had no one else. Life wasn't easy, but it felt honest. Then one morning, Ms. Reynolds called me into her office. She held a thin folder in her hands. "Emma, I need you on this one," she said. "The client's being sued by a corporation for breach of contract. They're ruthless." When I opened the folder, my breath caught. The plaintiff's name, Carter and Associates. My old firm. For a moment, the room blurred. Memories of the long nights, the betrayal, and that final walkout all came rushing back. "Emma," Ms. Reynolds asked softly. I closed the folder. "I'll take it." The first meeting with the opposing counsel was surreal. Across the table sat Mr. Carter himself. His hair was grayer, but that same calculated calm was still there. When he saw me, his lips curled into a faint smile. "Well, if it isn't my favorite troublemaker," he said. "I prefer truth seeker," I replied evenly. As the case unfolded, I realized how personal it was. They weren't just after our client, they wanted to discredit me. Evidence was twisted, emails fabricated, and soon rumors began spreading about my unethical behavior. But this time I wasn't alone. My new team stood by me, refusing to back down. And deep down I knew if they wanted a fight, I'd give them one. Because this wasn't just another case. This was my redemption. I spent nights buried in paperwork, searching for the one thread that could unravel their entire case. On the surface, it was a simple breach of contract suit. But something about the documents felt too neat, too rehearsed. I noticed inconsistencies. The company Carter and Associates represented had been dissolved 3 years ago. Yet somehow it was filing a lawsuit today. That shouldn't have been possible. When I brought my findings to Ms. Reynolds, her eyes widened. Are you sure about this? She asked. I double-checked the records, I said. They're using a ghost company to manipulate court filings. Someone at my old firm is behind this. Ms. Reynolds leaned back in her chair. Emma, this could expose serious fraud. But if you go after them, they'll come for you harder than before. I took a deep breath. Then let them. The next hearing was brutal. Carter's lawyers tried to discredit me, claiming I fabricated evidence. One even mocked. Maybe she's just bitter we let her go. I didn't flinch. The truth doesn't care who says it, I replied, holding up official records. Your client doesn't exist. Not legally, not financially, not ethically. A ripple of shock ran through the courtroom. For a brief moment, Mr. Carter's composure cracked. He leaned toward his assistant, whispering something sharp and urgent. I knew then I'd struck a nerve. That night, as I left the courthouse, I found an anonymous note on my car windshield. It read, "You should have stayed quiet, Emma." I looked around, but the street was empty. And for the first time since starting this case, I realized this wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about survival. Sleep became a luxury. I kept replaying the note in my head, the words burning like fire. You should have stayed quiet. Who would send that? Carter's firm? Someone from court? Or someone on the inside? The next morning I arrived early at the office. Ms. Reynolds wasn't in yet, but the lights were on in the records room, strange since only senior staff had access. I peeked through the glass and froze. It was Caleb, our new paralegal, the same one who'd helped organize my case files. He was photographing documents from my client's folder. Caleb, I said sharply. He jumped, dropping his phone. Emma, I was just what? I stepped closer. Stealing evidence for Carter? His face went pale. You don't understand. They offered money, a lot of it. I didn't think it mattered. You've already won this thing, right? Anger flared in my chest. You have no idea what you've done. This isn't just a case. People's lives are at stake. He looked down, ashamed. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd ruin me. I'm sorry. Before I could respond, Ms. Reynolds appeared behind me. I think you should tell that to the police, she said coldly. Within hours, Caleb was escorted out of the building in handcuffs. But the damage was done. Confidential information had been leaked. That evening, as I left the office, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. A distorted voice spoke. Nice work, Emma. But this isn't over. You can't fight what's already been bought. The line went dead. I stood on the dark sidewalk, the city lights blurring in the distance. For the first time, I felt the full weight of the war I'd started. And I wasn't sure who I could trust anymore. After Caleb's arrest, the office felt tense, like the calm before a storm. Everyone avoided eye contact, pretending things were normal, but whispers filled the halls. I knew Carter wouldn't stop now. He'd double down. Ms. Reynolds called me into her office. We can't let them control the narrative, she said firmly. They leaked files, we leaked truth. Her plan was bold. We'd compile every piece of evidence that proved Carter and Associates had revived shell companies for fraudulent lawsuits, and hand it straight to the district attorney. But to make it airtight, we needed proof from inside their network. That's where I came in. Using my old credentials, which, shockingly, still worked, I accessed their internal portal from an encrypted laptop. My heart pounded as I sifted through archives, emails, transaction logs. And then I found it. A signed directive from Carter himself authorizing payments to fake subsidiaries, laundering settlements through offshore accounts. This is it, I whispered. Ms. Reynolds leaned over my shoulder, eyes wide. Emma, this could end his career. Maybe even send him to prison. I saved everything onto a secure drive and encrypted the backup. But before we could submit it, my screen flashed, unauthorized access detected. Within minutes, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're playing with fire, Emma. And fire burns. I looked at Ms. Reynolds. They know. She straightened, unflinching. Then we moved faster. That night, as I left the office, 2 black SUVs idled across the street. My instincts screamed run. I walked faster, pretending not to notice. But deep down, I knew the war had only just begun. The next morning, my apartment felt different, too quiet, too still. I checked my locks twice before leaving for work, but the uneasy feeling wouldn't go away. At the office, Ms. Reynolds was already waiting, her expression grim. "Emma, we've been compromised," she said. "Someone accessed our server overnight. The drive with Carter's documents gone." I froze. "But it was encrypted." "They bypassed it," she replied. "This isn't a simple breach. It's professional." The same moment my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. "Next time it won't just be your files." I looked up at Ms. Reynolds. "They're watching me." She didn't hesitate. "We'll contact Homeland Security's cybercrime unit. If Carter's laundering money offshore, they'll want in." By noon, 2 federal agents were sitting in our conference room, reviewing the fragments of evidence I'd recovered. One of them, Agent Vargas, listened intently as I described how Carter's firm funneled settlements through fake companies. "Miss Hale, this runs deeper than corporate fraud," he said. "We've been tracking similar shell networks connected to international wire transfers. If you have what we think you do, this could blow open an entire operation." That night, I returned home exhausted. My door was slightly ajar. My heart slammed against my ribs as I stepped inside. Drawers open, papers scattered, laptop missing. But on my kitchen table sat a single USB drive. No note. No fingerprints. I plugged it into my backup computer, hands trembling. A single video file appeared. When I pressed play, the screen flickered, then showed a close-up of me, filmed through my own living room window. A distorted voice spoke. "You want the truth, Emma? Let's see how far you'll go for it." Agent Vargas and his partner, Agent Cruz, arrived at my apartment within an hour of my call. They moved like people used to danger, calm, scanning every corner before speaking. "Your place has surveillance tech," Vargas said, crouching by the window. "Microlens, long range. Whoever planted this knew exactly what they were doing." He unplugged a tiny black device, no larger than a coin. "This isn't standard corporate spying," he added. "This is government-grade hardware." "Government?" I asked, stunned. "Are you saying Carter's working with someone inside the system?" Vargas didn't answer directly. "Let's just say he's not playing alone." We went to headquarters, where I handed over the mysterious USB. The agents analyzed it immediately, the video, the encryption, the metadata. Then Vargas turned to me, expression unreadable. "This footage didn't come from your neighborhood security cameras," he said. "It came from a private surveillance satellite feed, rerouted through a foreign proxy." I blinked. "You mean I was being watched from space?" "Not you specifically," Cruz said softly, "but someone wanted to know how much you've uncovered." Over the next few days, the investigation expanded. Hidden in Carter's shell companies, the agents discovered transactions linked to offshore accounts in Belize, Cyprus, and Dubai, all connected to defense contractors and a covert trade operation under federal scrutiny. Ms. Reynolds joined the task force officially, representing legal oversight. She turned to me one night, exhaustion in her eyes but pride in her tone. "You started this by standing up in that courtroom," she said. "Now, Emma, you might be the key to dismantling something far bigger than Carter ever imagined." I nodded, but inside I knew the cost of truth was climbing higher every hour. The next morning, Agent Cruz called me in early. Her tone was clipped. "Emma, we found something. You need to see this." At headquarters, a wall of digital documents flickered on the screen. Court filings, bank transfers, emails. Vargas zoomed in on one. "This," he said, "is a direct authorization for international transfers. Signed not by Carter, but by Deputy Director Marcus Trent." My stomach dropped. Trent wasn't just any bureaucrat. He oversaw federal contracts for law enforcement agencies, including the very unit investigating Carter's firm. Ms. Reynolds frowned. "So, the man responsible for enforcing justice has been protecting criminals?" Vargas nodded grimly. "Trent's been laundering money through Carter's firm under the guise of federal funding. They've been using settlement payouts as camouflage for covert weapons deals." I stared at the evidence, the official seals, the falsified memos. So all this time Carter wasn't the head. He was just the front. "Exactly," Cruz said. "Trent's the real architect." The agents planned a sting, a coordinated operation to expose Trent during his upcoming congressional hearing. My role was risky. to testify anonymously using encrypted video feed, confirming the evidence I'd helped recover. That night I couldn't sleep. Every shadow outside my window felt alive, every sound amplified. I opened my laptop and typed a single line into my notes. If something happens to me, the truth must outlive me. When morning came, I dressed in black, my nerves coiled tight. As I entered the secured facility for the testimony, Vargas met my gaze. "You sure about this, Emma? Once you speak, there's no going back." I swallowed hard. If we don't stop them now, there might not be a system left to protect. The secure courtroom was dim, the air heavy with tension. I sat behind a frosted glass partition, my face blurred by digital masking software. On the other side, the committee faced Deputy Director Marcus Trent, whose confident smile didn't falter even as evidence was projected on the screen. Agent Vargas whispered through my earpiece, "Stay calm. Just answer clearly when they address you." The prosecutor began. "Miss Hale, can you confirm the authenticity of these wire transfers?" "Yes," I said, voice steady despite the thundering in my chest. Each document originated from Carter Financial Group's encrypted archives, accessed under federal warrant. Trent's jaw tightened. "This is a witch hunt," he snapped. "These so-called records could have been fabricated by a disgruntled employee." My hands clenched. "Then how do you explain the same routing numbers tied to offshore accounts under your alias?" A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Trent's attorney objected, but the evidence spoke for itself. The judge called for recess, chaos buzzing like static. Vargas leaned close to the mic. "You did good, Emma. Really good." But as I left the courtroom, my phone buzzed again. A single message from an unknown number. "You think the hearing ends it?" He's not the only one. Before I could show Vargas, a black SUV screeched to a halt outside the courthouse. Men in suits, no badges, stepped out. Cruz shoved me toward a side exit. "Go now. They're not ours." The hallway lights flickered. Sirens wailed somewhere far below. As Cruz fired a warning shot, pulling me through a back door, I realized this wasn't just retaliation, it was war. And the truth had just become the most dangerous weapon in America. The world outside vanished into a blur of headlights and rain as the SUV carrying me sped through back roads toward a hidden federal safe house. Cruz sat beside me, scanning the rearview mirror. "We can't go back to D.C., she said. "Trent's allies have deep roots. We don't know who's compromised." The message on my phone replayed in my mind. "You think the hearing ends it? He's not the only one." It wasn't an idle threat. Somewhere out there, others were still pulling the strings. At the safe house, a secluded cabin tucked into the Virginia woods, Vargas joined us later that night. He placed a thick file on the table. "We've traced more of Trent's communications," he said. "They point to a classified contractor, Nova Shield Systems. You ever hear of them?" I frowned. Carter used that name on invoices, but they were always redacted. I assumed it was fake. "It's not," Vargas said grimly. "Nova Shield's been funneling tech to foreign buyers under defense contracts. Trent provided cover through federal grants. So, this isn't just financial corruption," I whispered. "It's national security theft." He nodded. "And you're the only person who can testify to both the legal and operational trail." I looked down at the folder. My own name highlighted across internal memos, emails, and encrypted files. I wasn't just a witness anymore. I was evidence. That night I couldn't sleep. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. Cruz stayed awake by the door, her gun within reach. I stared at the ceiling and realized something chilling. If Nova Shield was still operating, they wouldn't let me live to expose them. Vargas entered quietly at dawn, his voice low. "Emma, pack a bag. We're moving you again." They found this location. I froze, pulse pounding. "How?" He didn't answer, just looked toward the window, where a red laser dot flickered briefly, then disappeared. The moment Vargas whispered, "They found us," the air in the safe house shifted. Cruz killed the lights, signaling me to get down. Through the window I caught the faint red sweep of another laser, this time moving slowly across the glass. "Two snipers," Cruz muttered, checking her sidearm. "At least." Before I could speak, the first shot shattered the front window, embedding in the far wall. Vargas yanked me behind the heavy oak table. We have to move now. A burst of automatic fire tore through the cabin's front wall, splintering wood and spraying glass. Crews returned fire through the side window, shouting, "Back exit, go!" We ducked low, sprinting down a narrow hallway lined with old file cabinets. Each impact echoed like thunder. Outside, rain poured in sheets, the forest alive with gunfire and shouting. Vargas shoved open a back door leading to a steep hill. "Head for the ravine," he barked. "There's a service road half a mile down. We'll regroup there." I slipped on the wet ground, catching myself on a tree root. Crews covered our retreat, firing short, controlled bursts. Then, a deafening explosion. The safe house erupted in flames behind us, the shockwave hurling me to the ground. "Crews!" I screamed. Smoke and heat swallowed everything. Vargas pulled me up, coughing. "We have to go." I stumbled after him, but when I looked back, I saw Cruz's silhouette in the flames, still firing. Then another explosion. She vanished in the firelight. We ran until my lungs burned, collapsing behind a fallen log near the ravine. Rain hissed on the flames behind us. Vargas gripped my shoulder, his face streaked with ash. They knew exactly where we were. Someone inside fed them our location. I stared back at the burning wreckage, realizing for the first time, the enemy wasn't chasing us anymore. They were inside our walls. By dawn, the fire was just smoke curling over the forest ridge. Vargas and I had followed the ravine for miles before finding shelter in an abandoned ranger outpost. My body ached, but my mind refused to rest. Every face I trusted flashed through my memory, and each one carried the same question: who sold us out? Vargas was already working on a secure laptop he'd recovered from the wreckage. "I've locked into a satellite feed. We'll know who moved last night's coordinates," he said. His tone was steady, but the tremor in his hands betrayed exhaustion and fear. Minutes later, the screen lit up with data logs. The trace led not to Novashield, not to Trent, but to someone in the federal task force itself. A name I recognized instantly: Agent Lauren Cruz. My stomach dropped. "That's impossible," I whispered. "She died saving us." Vargas zoomed in. The signal transmitting our location came from her encrypted device, 2 hours before the attack. She wasn't the target, Emma. She was the messenger. Shock coursed through me like ice. Then who was she working for? He hesitated, enlarging a document marked classified/NS Alpha. "Look at this. Cruz was listed as a liaison between Homeland Security and Novashield. She wasn't betraying you. She was obeying orders." I stared at the screen, the full weight of the revelation sinking in. "You mean they used her to track me?" Vargas nodded grimly. "Novashield wasn't the leak. Your own government was. They wanted the files you took. You just became a liability." The world tilted under the realization. Everything, the threats, the attack, Cruz's sacrifice, all orchestrated to erase me before the truth could surface. I looked at Vargas. "Then we don't run anymore," I said. "We expose them, all of them." He met my eyes and gave a slow nod. "Then we start by finding who controls Novashield." Outside, thunder rolled again, this time like a warning. The ranger station was gone by sunrise. Vargas had torched every trace we left behind. No signals, no paper trail, no chance of another ambush. "If we want to survive this," he said, "we stop hiding. We break in before they erase the evidence." We hijacked an unmarked SUV from a federal logistics hub outside Richmond. Inside, Vargas handed me a new ID badge and a folder marked Contractor Access, Novashield Systems. The photo on the badge was mine, but the name read Dr. Evelyn Moore, a data analyst from Homeland Security. "How real is this?" I asked. "Real enough for 2 hours inside the mainframe," Vargas replied, his eyes cold. "After that, we're ghosts again." By nightfall, we reached the outskirts of Arlington, the location of Novagate, a classified data center hidden beneath a bland corporate facade. Its glass towers gleamed under floodlights, guarded by biometric gates and armed security. Vargas parked in a restricted zone. "Once we're in, I'll handle the access keys," he said. "You get to the control server and pull everything with the NS Alpha tag. That's our proof." I nodded, heart pounding. Inside, the air was sterile and silent. We moved through steel corridors lined with motion sensors and security cameras. Every beep of my stolen ID felt like a countdown. At the main data vault, Vargas inserted a decryption chip. "We've got 5 minutes before the system flags the intrusion," he warned. Lines of code flooded the monitors: financial transfers, encrypted emails, private contracts. One folder stood out: Project Sovereign. I opened it and froze. It wasn't just about weapons or tech. It was a control program, an AI surveillance system capable of overriding federal defense protocols. Nova Shield hadn't just infiltrated Homeland Security. It was Homeland Security. Vargas looked over my shoulder, his face pale. "Emma, they built this for war, and they're already deploying it." Alarms began to blare. The alarms screamed through every corridor, turning the sterile calm of Nova Gate into a nightmare. Red emergency lights flashed, bathing the steel walls in a warning glow. Vargas ripped the chip from the console and shoved it into his pocket. "Go. They're sealing the exits." We sprinted toward the main corridor as thick blast doors began to slide shut behind us. A mechanical voice echoed overhead. "Security breach detected. Facility lockdown in progress." Vargas slammed his ID card on a reader panel. "Come on," he hissed. The door beeped once, denied access. Then the system spoke again. "Manual override engaged. Initiating containment protocol." The AI's taken control, I realized, heart hammering. It knows we stole the data. We ducked into a side corridor, trying to stay ahead of the automated shutters. Drones zipped from hidden panels, their sensors locking onto movement. Vargas fired twice, shattering 2 of them in midair, sparks raining over the floor. "The system's defending itself," he muttered. "It's not just code anymore, it's alive." We reached a maintenance tunnel, crawling into the dark as heavy footsteps thundered above us. Armed agents, human ones, had joined the hunt. "South exit through the coolant bay," Vargas whispered. "If we can reach the emergency shaft, we're out." The tunnel narrowed, the air sharp with metal and heat. I clutched the data chip in my jacket, its weight like a pulse in my hand. Suddenly, a blinding light flared ahead. A drone hovering in the darkness, its speaker crackling. "Unauthorized personnel detected. Drop the data drive." I fired first, the drone exploding in a flash of white sparks. "Not today," I said through gritted teeth. We burst through the maintenance hatch and into the night rain. The building behind us roared as the AI locked itself down completely, sealing away the secrets of Project Sovereign. Vargas glanced back at the fortress of steel. "They'll come for that chip." I nodded, tucking it deeper into my jacket. "Then we make sure the world sees what's inside." Thunder rolled, not from the storm, but from the distant sound of military choppers approaching. The rain came harder as we raced toward the coastline. Vargas's SUV fishtailed on the slick road, headlights cutting through fog. Helicopters swept overhead, their searchlights slicing the darkness. The chip in my pocket felt heavier with every passing mile. Not just data, but the truth the world wasn't meant to see. "They'll shut down every channel before we get this out," Vargas warned. "We need a secure broadcast node off-grid." I nodded. "There's one, the old comms relay outside Chesapeake. My team used it during the hurricane operations. When we reached the facility, the gates were rusted but intact. I powered the emergency generator, and the lights flickered to life." Vargas connected the laptop, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "Encryption bypassed. We're live, but only for a few minutes before they trace it," he said. I slid the chip into the port, the screen filled with the classified files. Nova Shield contracts, AI weaponization blueprints, lists of compromised officials. The truth was darker than we'd imagined. A private defense network built to control national defense decisions without oversight. I hit upload. Alarms screamed from the console. "They've found us," Vargas shouted. "They're cutting the feed." "Not yet." I rerouted the transmission through multiple relays, heart pounding. A map appeared, data packets scattering across continents. The files were already reaching public servers, news agencies, and whistleblower networks. Then connection lost. The monitors went black. Silence filled the air except for our ragged breathing. Vargas turned to me. "You did it." Outside, distant sirens wailed. We had seconds before they arrived. I looked out toward the sea, rain washing over my face. They built an empire of secrets, I said softly. Now the world will judge them. Vargas placed a hand on my shoulder. You know they'll call us traitors. Maybe, I replied. But the truth doesn't need permission. As dawn broke over the horizon, the first headlines appeared on every screen in America. Project Sovereign exposed. AI-controlled security program leaked by whistleblowers. For the first time in years, I felt the weight lift. I wasn't running anymore. I was free.